So we are going to talk about starting a new garden. Now, starting a new garden can mean a lot of different things for different people. Whether you are starting with an existing garden that you're just bringing back to life, or you're starting bare bones scratch, taming the wilderness, trying to grow some produce. After a couple years of keeping up with weeds and kind of improving your soil, it can be much easier to start a garden every spring. Like this plot here we've been working at for 2 years, so we have the weeds under control mostly, especially this time of year. And we've been adding mulch and leaf compost and things to help aid in building up our soils. So here you can see this is where we actually dumped our rabbit manure this winter when there was still snow. I wasn't quite sure where I was dumping it because there was about a 3-foot drift here. But as you can see, we still need to clean out this bed. There's plenty of perennial weeds and leftover plants like that sage in the corner. So we will broad fork this and pull out the weeds so we've got a nice fresh bed to start off with here in the spring. So raised beds and container gardens are much easier to start in the spring. This garden is a lot harder to manage. Last fall, this garden got away from me a little bit, especially in the farther sections. You can see lots of weeds growing. So this will take a lot more work, especially since we are working towards no-till. I'm really trying not to get our rototiller out. I'm sure there are some sections I will still use it just because we have so much work to do and I have very limited time to do it. So this garden is a little bit more difficult because you need to make sure that you get all the rocks, weeds out of the way. Any perennial grasses will take over if they're left in the soil. Now that these beds are established, it's pretty easy to go through with a pitchfork to gently loosen the soil and pull all the weeds out. While I clean up beds, these two kids are working on collecting up the strawberry runners. So this is another one of our strawberry patches that needs to get cleaned up, but it runs this entire row. And so on the paths, you can see that there are all these little runners coming off of these strawberries.
This one I got.
Nope, that's just a leaf. Okay, look right here. So you pick it up, Owen. Whoops, see, that one broke apart. So now we've got a new strawberry plant. Can you put this one in the bucket? And I'll show you another one. So they send off a shoot and then we'll root and start a new plant. Okay, see right here, Owen? See how they're attached? Okay, there's another one. So that one can go in the bucket. Good job. So we will fill up this bucket and we will sell some this spring and put them in containers for people. While they're working on that, I'm going to show you guys how I prep our raised garden beds. So I'm going to go through these beds and loosen the soil just like you would with a broad fork, and then I will pull out all of the weeds that are in there. I'm being kind of selective this year just because I do have some onions and things that are coming back from last year that I want to save seed from. And there's also nature's toilet paper growing. Let me show you. These plants right here are called mullein. Well, at least that's how I pronounce it. I'm sure someone pronounces it something different. Mullein is extremely soft and strong, so if you have to use it as toilet paper, I mean, it's probably better than newspaper, right? But we also save mullein when we find it growing in the wild because it is really good for ear aches. We have never had an ear infection in this house, and I think it's because anytime I've had a kid complain about an ear ache, we have used mullein oil in their ears. So I'm going to clear these out, get the weeds out. We're going to spread our rabbit manure around then that we dumped this winter, and we will have some raised beds ready to go. So all I am doing is sticking this fork as deep as I can down into the soil and lifting backwards. Now, these beds are probably too wet. I should not be doing this today, but you know what? It's spring. We had a lot of rain yesterday. So when you get lots of rain, especially with clay soil, it has an easier time compacting and it can make things harder to grow. And so you really should be waiting if you're tilling or even just broad forking like this. I should be waiting until the soil is dry and not so sticky wet. But we are just going to go ahead and do this anyway because there's no perfect way to garden and you just kind of have to do it when the time allows sometimes. Alright, so we are going to try to save, we had some green onions here. Can you see them in the camera, Addie? We had some green onions that were left out here last fall, and so we're going to let those go and try to save seeds from them. Not all of them, apparently. So we've got the first half of this bed all done. It is definitely too wet that we should have waited, but it's fine. So we got all the weeds pulled out and have the soil aerated nice and deep. We try to not disturb it as much as possible because of the worms, but then we also have children, and it turns into a science lesson of how many worms can you find. So luckily they will put them back, so we will get the worm benefits again. Right, Addie?
We always put them back after we find as many as we want.
Otherwise, you just stick this pitchfork as deep as you can, pull up, and that loosens up the soil enough that it's easier to pull the weeds out.
And we already have done this one, so we already put rabbit poop in the other half of the raised bed. My mom's working on the other half.
What are you doing?
Making these sweat and then there's sweat everywhere.
So you're gonna whack it flat and then spread it out.
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope that some of these tips and tricks will help you be able to start your own garden, especially in the interesting times that we're in. Gardening seems to be more popular than ever, and I think that is so exciting because homegrown vegetables are so much better.